Definitely have my anti-horny bear stick with me here. A lot of grizzlies around here. Everything's greened up. Everything's thick, lush. You can't see much until it's fairly close to you, but there's nothing worse than running into a horny bear and not being able to stop him. Right? Now, I'm just on my way to go get a shit pile of hay, because I got to take off 8 days this time. And it never stops, man. There's never much of a relaxing stretch of time. There's just a bit, but not much. Get some things done, but it's always something on the go. Before I get going, I don't know when that was by the time this video hit, but how about that young guy that shot that thing in the chest? And his attitude after of, let's finish this shit. Could you imagine having a small army of men like that young guy with a little bit of professional training and absolute integrity? You could do some serious changing of the planet, couldn't you? And for the better, I think. What a set of balls there, right up one of those things. Never seen them before in your life, and here comes ripping down a cliff straight at you, and you throw that gun up and pop one in the chest. Boom. Insane. What an insane freaking experience. I don't know why I was thinking about that. All right, before we get going, what do we got? First encounter. All right, now I better go back to the bottom of the pile here. All right, here we go. Let me know if there's a bear behind me, would you? I enjoy listening to your videos as I drive. You do excellent panoramic views from the sky. You also have the perfect voice for reading emails. You definitely live in a place of beauty and wilderness. Thank you for those kind, supportive words. I've had 2 different encounters with these hairy giants. My first time was mid-September 2007 near Springfield, Missouri. I needed to sit for a 34 break. I pulled my truck into the truck stop early that afternoon, parking at the edge of the parking lot nearest a field left to go to weeds. I had an excellent spot to enjoy my downtime. My driver's side of the truck was next to the field. Nothing to block my view, nor worry about any other truck crowding my space. Another truck driver had jumped out of her truck to walk her dog, which was a mature golden retriever. She walked her dog into the field. The weeds were waist deep to her. The dog wandered a bit, doing his business. They then left the field, going back into her truck. I sat for a bit, enjoying the day. I did my 34-hour break. I decided to be up by sunup to get driving. A fog had rolled in during the night. It was still thick. I sat in the driver's seat for a little bit, looking out of the fog, debating whether to stay put or get going. The sun was trying to break through, so I knew the fog would be breaking up soon. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed movement in the field by my driver's side. I noticed what looked like a hairy man squatting in the weeds, about the same area. The woman had been about the same area the woman had walking her dog. I watched this hairy man for at least 10 minutes. That is like a whole day in experience time. He or it seemed to be looking down over its side at something on the ground. I have no idea what he was doing. I can only assure it was male. He was intent upon whatever kept him occupied. Twice he would look towards the sun, as if sniffing the air, like a wild creature would. I still had no idea of what I was actually witnessing. I'd never seen such a hairy-looking creature with this long, red-colored hair. It reminded me of an orangutan. Not once in my thinking was, this is a Sasquatch. My mind was not even geared up for that, because I've never really thought of them before. I'd always assumed that they were black ape-like giants that may have escaped the radar of the categorized animal kingdom. After watching this hairy wonder, it finally stood up, not once looking my way. The weeds came maybe mid-thigh to this giant. He was silent as he blended back into what was left of the fog. I still was clueless, wondering what I'd been watching. My mind trying to pick through the zoological categories to place this red hairy man, because I knew it definitely was not a man, not even an unwashed old driver taking a dump in nature. I started my truck and made it to the on-ramp when my brain decided to tell me I'd just seen a Sasquatch. Needless to say, I had to pull off right there, stunned and stupid. Unbelievable shock. I was babbling like an idiot as I called my mom. Who else am I going to tell this to? She told me to be quiet about it because people just did not talk about these things. And she was right. I could imagine the censorship and negative crap that would have came my way. That was the first encounter. My other happened in September 2012 in a very small village called St. Francis, Kansas. I don't even know if a whole 50 people lived there. It was just getting towards evening hours. I'd loaded up out of Fort Morgan, Colorado, headed to Texas. It was my route for almost 6 months. I just turned onto 36 East, going towards St. Francis, when a deer jumped the shoulder and landed on my hood and grill. Bambi died at the scene of the accident, leaving body parts. Singed fur and guts upon my truck. Both my headlights died at the scene of the wreck as well. I called my dispatch. He said to get to a safe place and sit it out until morning. My truck was still drivable, just no lights. I pulled Bambi to the ditch. Tied my hood down with bungee straps and made my way about 3 miles to St. Francis. I parked by a dumpster by what looked like to be a gas station / cafe. It was pitch black dark shortly after I parked. Another truck pulled up running parallel to the highway. He was carrying cars. I didn't feel so alone then. Because it was just in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, I went to bed and was in a good sleep when the stench of skunk decided to wake me up at 4 a.m. It was real close because it was too strong of an odor to ignore. Then the worst kind of howl started right outside my truck. It was so loud and deep, I could actually feel it vibrate through me. I sat straight up in my bunk, scared shitless. Yes, shitless. Because in its howl, I could feel rage, anger, fear, aggression, and danger. It poured over me like nothing else. I've never in my life felt that kind of intense fear. Its howl was strong. It set off car alarms, dogs and coyotes barking. It was utter chaos for those brief minutes. After it quit its howling, an answering howl with the 2 whoops sounded in the distance. Now I am still sitting up in my truck, scared shitless. Everything just becomes silent again. The other truck driver hauled ass out of there. I was left there by myself, alone, freaked out. No way in hell I was going to go anywhere near my windows up in the front of the cab. I stayed there sitting up until people started pulling into the gas station / cafe. As soon as I was able, I got myself out of there. I've not been back to that area since. I'm fearless. Nothing scared me until that. I always wondered if anyone there ever talked about that night. As for me, I'm good if I never see that small village ever again. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to tell our experiences. Be safe, sir. And you be safe as well, sir. To you. And, it's always those shit-eating moments. The old, of course it happens now moments, right? Like meaning when now you don't have headlights and you can't bomb out of there in the dark. Of course you couldn't, right? What are the chances? Deer smashes your headlights. Next thing you know, one of these damn things is screaming his frickin' ass off outside your truck. Well, I wonder if how many other people heard that sound that you heard, and I wonder how many of those people are listening to this channel right now. I'll bet there's some of them are, and if they are, little bastards. If you want to chime in the comment section below, or into email it into how to hunt, or email it into share my story or tell my story at howtohunt.com. Right? No bears yet. It's be close to peak rut time. It's getting close to peak rut time, that's for sure. Thanks for sending that in, man. Make sure you stay safe out there, and if anything else happens, again, feel free to email in, all right? You're not alone. Now that you're a member of the Club of No Return. I don't know how stoked you are about that. Dear Steve, I seem lately to come up with more questions than puzzle pieces. After so many people having encounters, the scare attacks, the questionable people saying Sasquatch can tear you apart, the number of actual attacks seems small. I'm sure there's some violent Sasquatches, like violent humans, and maybe our behavior toward them is called a catalyst. There's so many news articles in New Mexico. I found this news article some time ago. Here it goes. 4th of July weekend, campers attacked by a beast-like creature west of Taos, New Mexico. Sunday, 29th April, 2019. New Mexico Game and Fish stated on 4th of July weekend, campers in Rio Arriba County were reportedly attacked by a beast-like creature, possible Native American shapeshifter or skinwalker beast. The incident occurred in the late night hours between 2 and 4 a.m. The spokesman for the NMDGF, it'll probably be the New Mexico Department of Game and Fish, advised to camp at your own risk in the Carson National Forest west of Tierras Piedras, New Mexico. As the cell phone service is in a dead zone area, the family that came up from Albuquerque, New Mexico for a weekend adventure came into cell phone service with a frantic 911 call to Taos Central Dispatch. However, as the incident occurred in Rio Arriba County, multiple agencies responded as the reporting party was hard to understand. Upon arrival to the scene, officers from New Mexico State Police, New Mexico Game and Fish, and Rio Arriba County Sheriff's Office observed what to be a family of 5 in total distress and unable to explain what it was. It appeared to be after the food that was left out and tore into the trash and apparently tried to abduct one of the small children. The father, James Trujillo, said, "I woke up to the sound of my kids screaming and the sound of something I've never heard before and thought it was a bear or mountain lion. So I grabbed my pistol and exited my tent to see a big beast-like creature tearing into my kid's tent. After firing 4 rounds off my 9mm, it dropped my daughter and ran off. Holy shit. It had a hold of the daughter." Sergeant Martinez, New Mexico SP, Sergeant Martinez, NMSP, took a report for the property damage to the vehicle and took photographs of the claw marks on the vehicle and tracks in the mud nearby. NMDGF advised to use extreme caution for planned camping trips out in the area south of Hopewell Lake on Forest Road 97, and a reminder to put food away and keep children in a secure location close by if there's several tents or family outings in the area. This incident is still under investigation, and possible sightings are asked in the community to report anything observed in the area to local agencies. Be prepared and be bear aware. Make sure you use caution with fires as the fire dangers remain high, said Lieutenant Mayes, NMDGF. And there you go. Karen, thanks a lot for that share. That's an interesting one and an alarming one. I couldn't imagine. Whether or not you accept these facts as real, you imagine that happening? Some big hairy son of a bitch ripped into your child's tent and has a hold of him? What a gong show. And answer your question about, how many attacks are violent. I'm pretty certain that true violent attacks by these beings with intent, I don't think there's going to be too many survivors to tell the tale, do you? Really? I have a funny feeling. I've always felt, I even feel it about grizzly bears. I tell them hunters up north when they get scared, they get paranoid and scared of grizzly bears and ask me all the typical questions. Are there many grizzly bears around? You have many problems? And I tell everybody, look, sleep like a frickin' baby. If they're so intelligent, if a grizzly bear wants to kill you, he's going to kill you. There's nothing you can do about it. We don't have the nose on us and or the night vision. All a grizzly bear has to do is sit on the side of the trail, wait for us to ride by and grab you. That's it. It's that easy. So imagine if you take a 8 or 9 foot tall human-like being that is outclasses us 500 to 1 out here. It's hard to imagine anyone surviving an attack with intent to kill from one of these beings. How? Right? So I don't know. We'll never know. I guess we'll never really know accurately how many attacks are possibly from these beings on human beings and are successful, right? Just the other day, Sarah was mentioning to me that there's a whole pile of missing people in Vancouver, BC right now, and they're not talking about it openly online. And she heard that first time, heard it from the police officer friend of hers. And sure enough, I Googled the other day, missing people in BC, and I think in the month of May, there was a person went missing almost every 2 days. What the hell's up with that? I'm not saying it's related, but I'm using that as an easy example of how many people go missing. Check out David Platz's channel. Right? And here I am out here by myself all over the place, operating up my ass as potential bait every time I do this, right? Oh well, whatever. Here we go. Let's get on to another one. You know how I like to rant and ramble sometimes. Thank you so much for sending that in too, all right? Keep us posted if you learn more. Hi, my name is Lee, and I live in Iowa. Oh, wait, if anybody knows the people that are involved in that incident, and if they want to, if you know them, or even if you are watching this channel right now, please email us in your experience with a descriptive of what had a hold of your child, okay? We want to know. Thanks. Hi, my name is Lee, and I live in Iowa. Living in Iowa makes this strange but very true. I lived on the outside edge of Des Moines for 7 years. There's nothing behind our house but some railroad tracks and then woods and a small creek. At this time, I was 16 and lived with my parents. I thought I was old enough to move downstairs in the house. Boy, was I wrong, LOL. I had moved my room downstairs and been there for about a week, and then it happened. I was awoken by the loudest and most terrifying scream I've ever heard, like body shaking. I jumped straight up, and about the same time, our backsliding door outside my room exploded, and a huge stone from out back was laying on our pool table. I'm guessing the stone was 50 pounds. My dad came running downstairs with his gun, screaming, "What the F was that?" I said, "I don't know, but I'm moving upstairs, LOL. For years, I put it out of my mind. Got married, had kids, and they're all now grown up. I'm now 54. Anyway, about 10 years ago, I was watching the show you hate, Finding Bigfoot, and they had a recording. When they played it, the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. It was the exact noise outside my house years ago. My wife said I looked pale and asked if I was okay. I said I had heard that scream before, and she laughed and said, "Okay." I would record the shows. Do I play back for my dad and didn't say, oh, typo. I would record the shows, played it back for my dad, and didn't say a thing. He looked at me and said, "I've heard that." That's my story, 100% true. Thanks for your time and love your show, Lee. Lee, thanks for sending that in, man. It'd be interesting to know how far away from the door was the pool table. How close is the pool table to that window, and if there was any kind of an arc for that 50-pound boulder, right? Because I'm trying to picture throwing any kind of a boulder through a window and it maintaining height and hitting the top of a pool table. Holy shit. What an insane, intense experience. Keep sharing more if you got it, right? Pursuit by red glowing eyes. Well, that's something none of us want. Hello, Steve. Glad to have the right place to share my story. In 1978, I experienced pursuit by a literal monster. I and my boyfriend at the time were fishing a tributary near the Cassatot River in Arkansas, about 20 miles from my home. I waded the water to a large rock, and he wandered upstream, casting as he walked. I was enjoying the nature sounds until suddenly they ceased. It was about dusk, and of course I told myself the usual placating things. But the only sounds came from the water. I began to call out for him, and an anxiety I cannot fully describe overcame me, until I was literally screaming his name. I could see nothing out of the ordinary, but it was as if nature sounds were barely breathing. As my friend had traveled quite a distance, it was almost dark. When he arrived to investigate my panic, as I heard him approaching, the forest and the grass came back to life. I could not prove anything about my experience to him, and we agreed that perhaps I did not need to duplicate these events. A few weeks later, we returned to the area. This time it was about 10 p.m. We were parked under pine trees and got out to enjoy the breeze under a full moon. As we were leaning against the truck hood talking about the day, we saw something large moving from the tree line across the river. There was a large dark mass that appeared to be bipedal and hair-covered, spanning some 7 to 8 feet in height. It was well illuminated in the moonlight. It was facing the moon on the west side of the cliff. It turned facing us, and that is when we saw the red glowing eyes. It didn't make a sound, but moved to the cliff face and jumped into the water. We watched in disbelief as the red glow surfaced, and we could hear what sounded like strokes of it swimming. We could see it moving across the water toward us. We snapped to life as we had been standing, emotionally paralyzed until that moment. We each raced to the truck door and sped away in seconds. My father was concerned that these two events had occurred at the same place. He was a veterinarian and had attended and had to report many cattle mutilation cases in previous years in the tri-state area of Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. He said he had experienced unusual and unexplained lights in the sky. and making their way through the woods. As he was a USDA inspector, he kept many things to himself to not alarm his family or reflect upon himself in his position. I've seen many energies step out of nowhere into our world, our vibrational plane. I'm an energy therapist and a nurse. It is my belief that although they come and go for their own purposes, we may never know their mission. The energies that I've encountered are not warm and fuzzy, as other organizations calling themselves researchers can continue to reflect. There is a real and present danger that accompanies them. Thank you for the time and energy used to good end. I do believe this is no puzzle. You are, however, bringing us together and giving us a voice. We will never convince those outside of this experience that these creatures are real and a danger. Perhaps they will have their other sight opened by an equally unnerving encounter. The unseen energies seem to be less effective in their disguises as of late. If you move or travels bring you near among the tri-state area, please let me know. I appreciate your every effort and will keep in any way and will help in any way I can. Thank you so much, Yvonne Champion. Wow. Yvonne, I'm pretty stoked that you contacted us. That's one hell of an experience for you to witness, and your boyfriend, and anybody else, obviously. The red eye thing is creepier than shit. But you being familiar with the energy, make sure you stay in touch, all right, if you can. Myself, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out here, we are very interested in energy and various different vibration levels of our existence, right? So anything that you think could help assist many of us here that are looking for that knowledge. If you got anything else, make sure you email it in, all right? Contact. Maybe even we'll have you talk live soon once I get the studio built. And for you guys, when I mentioned about that man cave, it's just my place. That's my desk, my work area, where I have all my camera equipment, my guns, my archery equipment, my fishing equipment, you name it. It's going to be like a little mini sporting store, right? But not a store. So I'm not just specifically doing that to do this. And you already know I prefer it outside above anything at all. So the man cave, the studio won't be used it won't be replacing what I'm doing now. I will always be doing this outside and taking you to numerous different places that I can. But the odd time, who knows, I haven't a clue how often we'll be using that studio and we'll be talking. Wow. So many people having so many incredible experiences. So many people becoming more brave and sharing. All right. My Sabe stories. Second time sent. Not read on your channel yet, but glad because I added more details. All right, here we go. Hi, Steve. Please use my first name only, Deborah. Okay, Deborah, no problem. I'm compelled to share my stories because of your channel. Perfect. That is the intent. I really enjoy your no-holds-bar attitude. Your honesty and candor is so refreshing. I wish more people were like that. As being on the autism spectrum, it's hard to read between the lines, as they say. Thank you for the kind words. I'm from North Bay. My grandparents live in Callander, Ontario, Canada, near Lake Nipissing. When I spent time with my grandparents as a child, we would go for hikes, camping, fishing, berry picking, etc. So I'm pretty comfortable being in the outdoors. My grandfather was military, an avid outdoorsman and Ojibwe. I love being outdoors as much as I can. I find it soothing, listening to the wind through the trees in my portable hammock. My stories. At the time, I didn't know I had experience with the Sabe. I was 7 and didn't realize it until I was older. My grandfather and I were walking in the woods behind his house, and this strong smell came out of nowhere. It was fall smell, but also kind of a wet dog garbage dump smell, but more intense. That was the only time I smelled it. Then we heard 2 bangs, not at the same time. It didn't concern me because I was with my grandpa. I also think of the bangs, I believe they were rock bangs, to be honest. I've always heard the bangs while in the bush playing and just thought, well, that's what the bush sounded like. Literal autism trait. But then his energy changed and his body got stiff and he said, "We're going home now." I didn't have the words at the time as a young child for his energy shift, but I knew instinctively that something was off with my grandfather. I didn't feel scared as I heard that sound multiple times while scampering around. We started back home and he was cracking jokes, but I could tell he was trying to lighten the mood and to make me not worry about what I didn't know. We reached the house and he stopped, bent on one knee to reach my height, and then looked me intently and said, "Promise me you'll never go alone in the woods at dusk or dawn by yourself. Always be with someone." And I promised. Didn't know exactly why, but I said so. Second experience as a child, same summer. We were camping past Temagami, Ontario, Canada, blueberry picking with a family. I was happily eating blueberries, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw what I thought was a bear, crouched half behind a huge rock. Seen many bears at the dump. The difference, though, with this bear is that it was long and lean, crawling on the ground like a person in boot camp. As I was watching it, more curious than anything, it disappeared into the bush. I continued to pick blueberries, eating honestly, as I didn't feel afraid in the least. Shortly after, we all heard multiple bangs. It was like a tiny baseball bat hitting something hard, not like in the shows. After the tiny bangs, my grandparents looked at each other and casually said, "It's time to go back to camp." Earlier than we usually did, for lunch. At the time, I didn't think we should be scared. That night, the adults were having some drinks and talking about Bugwaginini, wild man. I listened intently in the tent, and that's when the fascination began for me. I read everything I could from the 70s and on, but the stories from my community and elders made it much more sense to me. Sabe is not primitive apes. I agree with you, Steve, that the name Bigfoot is misleading and not giving the respect they deserve. I've been told they're good and bad wild men, just like us. My last childhood experience was in the winter, again in Callander. I was snowshoeing behind my grandparents' house, and I managed to roll down a hill with the snow covering on top of me. Great fun, but this time I felt panicked, but then this calm came over me. I also remember that it had become very, very quiet. My thoughts were not my own. I was told to move slowly and to float on top of the snow like when swimming in water. I managed to pull myself up and out and was told to go back to the house. When I think of this experience, I just thought it was an angel or something of that nature, but now I'm wondering if it could have been a Sabe. Fast forward 30 years, and my hubby and I were camping outside of Kingston, Ontario, Canada. Strangest feeling the second day, like we were being watched, but not in a negative way. I thought nothing of it, really, and went kayaking the whole day. That night, we were woken by the sound of small rocks hitting the top of the tent. I had a brief moment of fear, but then I was more annoyed than anything because I was woke up. I yelled, "I'm trying to sleep, go away," and it stopped. The next day, the odd feeling, being watched, came back. Close to dinner, the feeling was so overwhelming, we started packing up and literally throwing our gear into the car as quickly as we could. It felt like panic/anxiety, but there was nothing to be panicked by. Not entirely sure it was our panic anxiety. After watching your YouTube channel this past year, I now realize it was projected onto us. By the time we were ready to leave, a thick fog rolled in and the moon was full and had an orange halo around it. Just thought to add that point, as it's kind of strange. Since the pandemic hit, I've had some free time to look into my interests. When I think of Sabe, I think of wilderness. I was surprised to find out that they could be closer than that. This is why I now believe our Kingston experience most likely was a Sabe encounter. Thank you so much for what you do. I appreciate hearing all the different ideologies, opinions, thoughts, and ideas. There have been a few stories that gave me a puzzle piece or two. Some have suggested people of the spectrum have sensory issues. I believe it's an extra enhanced sense. My hearing is so good that I have to wear noise-canceling headphone. Oh man, envy that one. My son is always amazed at what I can hear, to his dismay, when he's planning some shenanigans with his buddies, LOL. Please don't stop what you're doing. I'm happy to be part of this round table. And we are happy to have you here too, beside us. Of interest, there is a Canadian company called Hyperstealth Biotechnology Inc., located in British Columbia. They developed a new technology called Quantum Stealth that can make something as large as a tank completely invisible by bending/refracting of light. I mentioned this as it reminded me of the quantum physics gentleman that emailed you about the Sabe breaking in and out of military complexes and how a Sabe dematerialized in front of other scientists. I could be reaching, of course, but I trust my instincts. Perhaps that's why they are hunted. P.S. I would so buy a t-shirt if you decided to add merch. Thank you again. Migwetch. Thank you again. Migwetch. Deborah. Enjoy your day. Deborah, thank you so much. Absolutely appreciate it. The time it takes for people to email in is it's just a substantial gift to everybody, right? Especially these days. I don't even have time to text friends back 99% of the time lately. So I really, really appreciate the time it takes all of you to email us in your experiences. It's very, very appreciated. And if you got any more, make sure you email it in, throw it down in the comment section, do whatever you got to do, but make sure you speak out loud, openly, honestly, and share your knowledge with us, okay? What else? I guess that's about it. Oh yeah, the title of the email, the title of the video again. Well, I guess my message is, gotcha again.